If you are the kind of person who is constantly seeking out new knowledge, a true learner, you probably look at the world a little differently.
Right.
You look for the stories kind of hidden just beneath the surface. Today, I want you to look at a house, not just a structure with walls and a roof, but a building that acts as this like physical timeline.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Imagine a physical space that has absorbed a nation's birth, its fight for survival, and its complete structural transformation, all just soaked right into its concrete foundation.
Yeah, because looking at architecture as a primary historical text is, well, it's an incredibly powerful analytical tool.
Totally.
We're so historically conditioned to view the past as just a sequence of dates, right? Or treaties signed in these distant, sterile rooms by men in suits.
Right, exactly.
But homes bear witness in a way that documents just don't. I mean, they hold the mundane, the tragic, and those really deeply personal memories of the people who actually lived through those sweeping geopolitical turning points.
And, well, that lived experience is basically our mission for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're pulling from this remarkably detailed historical study and thesis by Aban Johan bin Abang Qasim, and it's titled A Century of Rumah Batu, 1863 to 1963.
That's a great piece of work.
It really is. And our goal today is to explore how a single pioneering concrete house in Sarawak, Borneo, kind of allows us to reclaim the historical narrative.
Yeah.
We're taking the standard colonial perspective and just like flipping it inside out. We're going to look at a century of radical change through the eyes of the indigenous Perabangan family.
Which is so important. Shifting the center of gravity away from the colonial rulers is it's a necessary corrective for this era, I think.
Definitely.
When you read the dominant histories of 19th century Sarawak, the narrative focuses almost entirely on the Brooke dynasty.
Right, the White Rajas.
Exactly. These British adventurers who essentially established a private kingdom in Borneo, James Brooke and his successors, are usually cast as like the sole main characters of the region's development.
Okay, let's unpack this because to understand the significance of this house, we first really have to understand the immense weight of the family who built it.
Right.
This source material redirects our attention to local agency. The Parabangans were an ancient aristocratic Malay clan, and we are talking about roots that trace all the way back to the Majapahit Empire in the 15th century.
That is huge.
Yeah. For anyone unfamiliar, the Majapahit was this massive, culturally revered maritime empire that dominated Southeast Asia. So the Parabangans derived their authority from that ancient lineage. I mean, they were the established rulers and administrators of this specific region long before any British ship ever appeared on the horizon.
Yeah, and establishing that deep historical continuity is crucial. The Brooke dynasty didn't just arrive in Sarawak and conquer a blank slate,
right,
or instantly subjugate a passive local population. They stepped into a highly structured, complex society.
A society that was already working.
Exactly. The region was governed by centuries-old patron-client relationships. So in this system, the Perabangan elites provided protection, leadership, resources. And in return, the local populations offered their loyalty and their labor.
Makes sense.
And the British rulers recognized immediately that their survival depended entirely on the Parabangans' willingness to, well, cooperate and legitimize the new colonial administration.
Which makes the year 1863 so pivotal.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the exact moment we see that invisible ancient authority manifested into something aggressively physical. The leader of the Perabangan family, Datu Bandar Abang Haji Muhammad Qasim, he commissions the construction of Rumah Batu, which translates literally to concrete house or stone house.
Yeah.
And the materials chosen for this project, I mean, that was a massive, deliberate political statement, wasn't it?
Without a doubt. The shift from organic materials to concrete was revolutionary in this context.
Right.
Because at this point in history, the standard architectural vernacular for everyone in Sarawak, and I mean, including the highest ranking elites, was traditional wooden houses built on stilts over the riverbanks.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, wood and thatch were highly practical for the jungle environment, but they were fundamentally impermanent.
Right, they break down.
Exactly. They required constant rebuilding due to the climate. So concrete represented unyielding permanence.
And that visual contrast is almost unbelievable when you think about typical colonial power dynamics.
It really is.
At the exact moment, the Datu Bandar is pouring the foundation for this massive, multi-story concrete fortress. The Raja himself, the supreme colonial ruler of the kingdom, is living in a wooden bungalow.
Yes.
Like The Raja's famous concrete palace, the Astana, wouldn't be built until 1870. That means for 7 full years, the native leader had a more advanced, imposing residence than the colonial monarchs.
The visual hierarchy of the landscape was entirely inverted.
It's like a local mayor deciding to build a gleaming 50-story steel skyscraper right next door to the king's wooden castle.
That's a perfect way to put it.
I look at that power dynamic and wonder how it didn't immediately spark a conflict. Doesn't this feel like a highly dangerous flex? We see colonial rulers tolerating a native leader openly displaying superior wealth and architectural permanence.
Well, what's fascinating here is the nature of their symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
The Brooks didn't dismantle this display of wealth because they fundamentally needed the Datu Bandar to maintain order.
Ah.
In the Southeast Asian cultural context, the concrete of Rumah Batu represented Nama.
Nama.
Yes. It's this complex concept that translates roughly to prowess, dignity, or prestige. By elevating his own Nama through this imposing house, the Datu Bandar was projecting strength to the local populations.
Got it. So by proving his own strength, he was essentially acting as a lord-bearing pillar for the Brooke administration. If the local population respected the Datu Bandar and he worked with the Brooks, the whole region remained stable.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The Brooke Raj required the Parabangans to administer the natives according to traditional customs.
Mm-hmm.
If the Datu Bandar appeared weak or subservient, the entire colonial administration's grip on the region weakened. So Rumah Batu functioned as a physical symbol of a highly unique Asian-white collaboration.
Wow.
It proved structurally that the native leaders were acting alongside the colonial rulers as partners in a shared kingdom.
That paints a much more nuanced picture of 19th century colonialism than we usually get.
Yeah, it really does.
It was a negotiated partnership. But physical permanence doesn't guarantee political permanence.
No, it doesn't.
As the narrative moves into the 20th century, global conflicts reach the shores of Borneo, and the physical space of Rumah Batu undergoes some brutal transformations.
Yeah, the architectural stability of the house remained, but its purpose was violently redefined by the outbreak of World War II.
Right.
In 1941, the Japanese military invaded Sarawak, and the Perabangan family, facing the immediate threat of the occupation, was forced to flee their concrete stronghold and take refuge in a remote village.
And while they were hiding in the jungle, the Japanese military commandeers Rumah Batu, because it was still one of the most substantial buildings in the region, they repurposed it for their own administrative needs. And the thesis provides these vivid, visceral details of the occupation.
It's wild to read.
The Japanese used this aristocratic family home as a medical clinic, as a military court, and as a rubber storage facility.
Yes.
The family recounts that the occupying forces stack raw, unrefined sheets of rubber all the way to the ceiling of the ground floor.
The psychological blow of that specific detail, it cannot be overstated.
I can imagine.
You take a space designed to project Nama, a space of ultimate prestige, where local chiefs gathered to discuss the governance of the region, and you turn it into a utilitarian industrial warehouse. The smell of raw rubber is overwhelming. It's acrid. Filling the grand halls of Rumah Batu with industrial resources was a profound desecration of the local aristocracy's dignity.
And when the war finally ends and the family returns to their home, the geopolitical trauma leaves behind these bizarre physical artifacts.
Oh, the license plates.
Yes. The kids exploring the ground floor find the house scattered with abandoned Japanese license plates. And without grasping the gravity of the global war that just displaced them, the children simply used the license plates to build little toy models on the floor.
It's such an image. We see the detritus of an occupying army instantly transformed into the raw material for childhood play.
Yeah.
It perfectly captures how macro history is processed on a micro level. But, the departure of the Japanese did not usher in a return to the pre-war golden age.
Not at all.
Instead, the aftermath of World War II triggered the most devastating political and existential crisis in the Parabangans' history.
All right, we arrive at the anti-cession movement of 1946. So, Sarawak emerges from the war in absolute economic and physical ruin. The third white Raja looks at the devastation and unilaterally decides he cannot rebuild the state.
Yeah.
He signs a treaty to cede Sarawak entirely to the British Crown, With the stroke of a pen, Sarawak goes from an independent, shared kingdom to a formal British crown colony.
And this unilateral decision fractured the state.
Completely.
Now, the source material is very careful to outline both perspectives here. And to understand the historical weight, we have to look at the validity of both sides impartially.
Right, absolutely.
From the Rajah's perspective, ceding the territory to Britain was a deeply pragmatic, perhaps unavoidable step. I mean, the state's infrastructure was devastated.
Right.
Becoming a crown colony provided immediate access to British reconstruction funds, modern administrative resources, and a structured rebuilding process that a single, financially exhausted dynasty could no longer provide.
Yeah, looking at the sheer cost of rebuilding a nation after World War II, the pragmatism of the Rajah's choice makes logical sense.
It does.
But from the perspective of the native leaders, particularly the Parabangans, this treaty was an ultimate betrayal.
Yeah.
They had spent a century building an independent nation in a delicate collaboration with the Brooks. They viewed this cession as the complete loss of their aristocratic autonomy.
And the protest against this cession took the form of a massive statewide strike led by the native elites.
Wow.
And the personal cost to the Perabangan family living inside Rumah Batu was staggering. Family members resigned en masse from their secure government jobs in protest, plunging their own household into extreme poverty to make a political point.
The oral histories in the thesis describe a terrifying fall from grace.
Mm-hmm.
You have the descendants of the region's most powerful aristocrats suddenly eating plain salted rice just to survive. The women are frantically baking cakes to sell in the streets. The grandfather of the family becomes a fisherman. They even had to dress the young girls up as boys so they could safely go out into the public markets and sell the fish.
It's hard to imagine.
It really is. It raises a difficult question, though. Why bankrupt your entire family and starve your children over a political treaty? The British weren't physically attacking them. The administration was just changing hands.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to analyze the psychology of the local population during this transition.
Okay.
This wasn't just a debate over political theory. It was driven by literal, visceral fear.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The thesis notes that many locals profoundly misunderstood the legal term cession. They believed the country was literally being sold off as a private real estate transaction to the British Crown.
Oh, wow.
And they assumed that under this new colonial rule, they would be physically evicted from their own lands and homes.
So they weren't just striking for abstract sovereignty. They believed they were fighting to keep the roofs over their heads.
Exactly. And beyond the sheer panic of the misunderstanding, the cession marked a painful, inevitable transition in how society functioned. Sarawak was moving from an old feudal system based on those ancient patron-client relationships and bloodlines to a modern, standardized bureaucracy.
A huge shift.
Massive. Under the British Crown, administrative positions would eventually be awarded based on civil service exams and bureaucratic merit, not on tracing your ancestry back to the Majapahit Empire.
Right.
The exclusive hereditary power of the Parabangans was evaporating, and their desperate strike was an attempt to hold on to the worldview that Rumah Batu was built to represent.
They were mourning the loss of an entire societal structure where their name held ultimate power.
Yeah.
But while the political foundation of their world was collapsing, the day-to-day reality inside the walls of Rumah Batu was shifting from a monument of aristocratic power to an incredibly crowded, vibrant ecosystem.
It really was.
We need to zoom in on the microculture of the 1950s because the contrast between their political decline and their daily domestic life is fascinating.
The social history embedded in the architecture becomes arguably the most engaging part of the text. As their external influence waned, the internal population in the house exploded.
Mm-hmm.
By the 1950s, there were approximately 40 people living inside Rumah Batu at one time.
40 people.
Yeah, 40.
The concept of modern privacy simply did not exist. There were no private bedrooms for individual nuclear families. All the cousins, aunts, and children slept lined up on mats in the massive central hallways.
Right.
And the dining hierarchy was intensely strict, reflecting the remnants of their aristocratic structure. The text details how the patriarch of the family would eat first, seated at a formal table, and he would be served the prime cuts of food.
And, the distribution of resources in a crowded communal setting is always a clear indicator of social rank.
Yeah, the thesis highlights a specific example involving a chicken drumstick.
I love this story.
Right. A whole chicken was a massive luxury during these lean post-war years. The patriarch would get the drumstick. Meanwhile, the dozens of women and children would sit on the floor nearby, waiting to excitedly eat whatever was left over. The author's father recounts a specific memory where the patriarch actually handed him an entire, untouched, leftover chicken drumstick. He describes it as the absolute highlight of his month. It was treated as a major familial event.
That interaction perfectly illustrates communal Malay living of the era. The physical sharing of food reinforced the hierarchy, but it also reinforced the bonds of care.
Yeah.
Respect for elders was paramount, demonstrated daily through the physical allocation of space and calories. Yet despite these strict social boundaries, the massive architecture of Rumah Batu also served as a paradise for the children.
They had a literal concrete fortress to play in.
Exactly.
The children would use the vast empty rooms on the ground floor to stage epic games of cowboys and Indians. It is a striking image, born children in the 1950s, running through the halls of a century-old Malay aristocratic home, acting out scenes from Western cinema with pretend six-shooters.
It's so cool. We are seeing global popular culture beginning to seep through the concrete walls, influencing the next generation, even as the older generation maintained deep traditional practices.
Right.
The house hosted ancient rituals alongside these modern influences, most notably the Burmukan or the Gendang ceremonies.
The Gendang ceremony is such a rich detail.
It's fascinating.
When someone in the extended family got married, it wasn't a quiet afternoon affair. It was a massive multi-day event that drew in the surrounding community. And the centerpiece of the celebration was an incredibly elaborate matchmaking ritual that took place right in the main hall of Rumah Batu.
The architectural space was temporarily divided to facilitate a highly structured social interaction.
Yeah, they would hang a thin, translucent batik curtain straight down the middle of the grand room.
Right. All the unmarried women would sit together on one side of the curtain, beating traditional drums. The unmarried men would gather on the other side, dancing to the rhythm. But the real attraction wasn't just the music. The women would sing out or sell these incredibly complex, witty, extemporaneous poems through the curtain.
Oh.
And the men on the other side would have to listen, instantly compose a poetic reply that matched the rhyme and theme, and sing it back. It served as a culturally sanctioned, highly entertaining intellectual arena. It tested the wit, humor, and intelligence of the younger generation.
Yeah, no pressure, right.
Right. It was a traditional matchmaking system that allowed young men and women to evaluate each other's mental agility within the safety of the family home, overseen by the entire community.
The energy in that room must have been electric. But a massive 100-year-old house packed with 40 people is bound to have a different kind of energy at night. The source material dives deep into the supernatural reality of Rumah Batu. And the spiritual ecosystem of the house was just as densely populated as the physical one.
Yeah, Malay culture possesses a very rich, highly specific taxonomy of the supernatural. The unseen world is treated with the exact same seriousness as the physical environment.
Well, according to the family's oral history, the architecture itself was spiritually guarded. A Muslim genie reportedly protected the right wing of the house, while an infidel genie guarded the left wing.
Right.
Beyond the genies, the hallways were allegedly full of ghosts. But the most memorable supernatural account in the thesis is the story of the oily naked man.
A phenomenal intersection of local lore and bizarre practicality.
Totally. The story goes that an aunt is up late one night, ironing clothes in a quiet room. Suddenly, a bundle of white linen falls out of the dark attic space directly above her. She reaches out to touch it, and the linen instantly vanishes into thin air. The family is terrified, assuming it is a malicious spirit.
Right.
But a few days later, the local police arrest a burglar prowling the neighborhood. The man is stark naked and completely covered in slippery oil to avoid being grabbed by authorities.
Oh my goodness.
During his interrogation, he confesses that he had recently broken into Rumah Batu by crawling through the attic and disguising himself as a bundle of white linen.
The supernatural explanation is suddenly replaced by a highly creative, very naked criminal enterprise.
The ghost was just a slippery burglar.
Just a guy.
But the adults in the house also spoke constantly of yellow footprints mysteriously appearing on the wooden stairs, and they warned the children about the hantu bangkus, which is essentially a traditional Malay mummy that wanders the dark halls at night searching for victims.
Right, the hantu bangkus.
Now, I have to challenge the narrative slightly here. You have 40 people living in one house. You have dozens of kids running wild, playing cowboys and Indians all day. Doesn't this heavy reliance on terrifying ghost stories seem less like genuine spiritual encounters and more like a highly effective 1950s supernatural parenting hack?
That's a good point.
If you need 40 kids to stay in bed and be quiet at night, telling them a mummy is roaming the hallway seems like an incredibly efficient strategy.
It really does.
Yeah.
And this raises an important question about the sociology of fear.
Yeah.
Whether the adults genuinely believed they were seeing the Hantu Bankus, or whether they actively fabricated the yellow footprints to control the children, the fear the children experienced was completely real. And that fear served a vital structural purpose for the family.
It created a boundary when physical boundaries didn't exist.
Exactly. In a crowded communal environment lacking private rooms, the supernatural acts as a tool for social control. It maintains order in the chaos. It enforces strict obedience and deference to the elders, who are seen as possessing the knowledge to protect the children from these spirits. But more importantly, a house that holds your family's specific ghosts is a house you are deeply tethered to.
Oh, wow.
The supernatural wasn't just spooky folklore. It was the psychological mortar holding the community together. As their political power faded in the outside world, the shared mythology inside Rumah Batu kept their internal identity strong.
So what does this all mean?
Good question.
When we pull back from the intricate poetry debates, the towering stacks of rubber, and the slippery burglars, what is the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive? To me, it proves that history is almost always recorded by the people who sign the treaties and draw the borders. But the actual texture of history, the daily anxiety, the loss of identity, the struggle to adapt that happens inside the walls of a home.
Yeah, we find the truest reflection of a society's transformation in the leftover chicken drumsticks, the hidden license plates, and the ghost stories used to enforce order.
And as the decades rolled on, Rumah Batu proved that survival ultimately requires adaptation.
It does.
When the Parabangans lost their aristocratic power and the modern bureaucratic state took over, they didn't just abandon their concrete monument. The newly formed government needed administrative space. So the family allowed their grand ancestral home to be utilized by the public. For a time, Rumah Batu served as a public maternity clinic on Wednesdays. They eventually allowed the Grand Hall to be used as an Islamic court.
The physical structure survived precisely because it adapted to the civic needs of its new era. It successfully transitioned from a private monument of exclusive elite power into a public utility serving the broader community.
It is a remarkable century-long journey for a single building, which leaves us with a final thought for you listening right now. We have just spent all this time excavating the hidden meanings, the anxieties, and the power shifts embedded inside a 100-year-old concrete house in Borneo. But think about the physical building you live in right now, the walls around you.
Yeah, if a historian were to excavate your home in exactly 100 years, what would the physical evidence say about our current society?
What completely mundane object sitting on your counter, or what daily thoughtless habit of yours would that future historian view as a profound, flashing symbol of the anxieties, the power structures, and the massive technological shifts of our current decade? What is the concrete of your own life? Something to mull over.